and let us all do we can to build a better future.
All right, speaking of Kira, you got a story for the people. What is going on?
I don't know what's going on anymore. Okay, so what's going on is that passive investors have become the largest holders of top oil companies.
Ooh.
So I thought that was a really interesting little factoid that I found today. So what's a passive investor? A passive investor rarely buys and sells and typically buys index funds or other managed funds. Passive investing broadly refers to a buy and hold portfolio strategy for long-term investment horizons with minimal trading in the market. So passive investing is, like people's 401ks, people who are, investing for retirement, that kind of thing. And I'll have you all know that passive investors are the largest holders of stock for top oil companies. So I just want everybody to kind of put that together.
Yes.
So among a dozen U.S. fund managers contacted by Reuters from companies overseeing about $7 trillion in assets, most said they prefer oil firms to generate returns and give their shareholders cash to make their own renewable bets. Now, most of these passive investors are working through these kinds of companies, right? Because they're not actively, trading as an occupation.
Mm-hmm.
But shocker, money flowing into oil stocks runs contrary to a broader embrace of climate-aware funding. I don't think anybody's really that surprised. So with oil and gas prices jumping this year, the U.S. oil majors mostly have delivered higher returns and achieved better earnings multiples and dividend yields than rivals, cementing shareholder enthusiasm. For example, the total return of the XOP, which tracks oil and gas stocks, was 92%. 92% was the return for the year as of this Tuesday afternoon.
Wow.
That's insane. Okay, so that's compared to 22% total return of the ESG fund, the Vanguard Social Index Fund, and the S&P 500 was 23%.
Wow.
Over the same period. So yeah, the price of gas going up, people making money, and I just wanted to make sure that you all knew. I forgot that I looked this number up. I mentioned most people's stocks are being traded through, funds that are holding on to trillions of dollars of assets. 85% of stocks are managed by these large financial firms, right? So even though technically passive investors are the largest holders of these oil stocks, their money is being managed by really large firms, just to paint the picture for you. So top U.S. oil firms, Chevron, ExxonMobil, and ConocoPhillips, rejected direct role in wind and solar and have put less of their outlays into energy transition plans compared with the Europeans. Most actually expect to increase oil production. Michael Liss, who is a portfolio manager over at American Century Value Fund, said they own more of the U.S. majors than European, partly because the American companies spend a lesser share of capital on things like renewable power and alternative fuels at a time when oil demand remains strong. The U.S. and European governments differ in a way in how they want oil companies to cut their emissions. When the U.S. lawmakers favor increased spending on carbon capture and storage, the German and British governments have passed laws requiring sharp reductions in greenhouse gases. So basically, this report and, some of the numbers that I looked up are saying that our government has a lot of impact and a lot of control on how these companies are getting invested in. So, basically, if we see that the oil market is not going to be on the decline, passive investors and these investment companies will continue to invest in these stocks because there is no end in sight. And so it's this roundabout circle that just, it just grows itself, you know. So while the oil market has questionable growth ahead, renewable energy adoption is accelerating. Forecasters currently estimate that capacity additions in the U.S. alone will grow at 15% the annual average over the next decade. So all of these folks who are passive investors who are investing for long-term reasons have no reason not to invest in renewable energies, right? Because renewable energies are projected to increase 15% annually over the next decade. That's a really big increase.
But oil and gas are moving up 92%.
Yeah, but oil and gas are moving up at 92%. In the short term, though, right? Okay.
This is the thing.
Yeah.
So, it's
So
like,
that's discuss.
Yeah.
Go.
Okay. So I think another thing that we should factor in is the demographic that own these stocks. It's not people our age that have the financial ability to have these passive stocks. And I know how these conversations have to go in these meetings. You sit down with a retirement manager or whatever, and they're like, oh, let's figure out how we want to diversify your assets and your investments. Do you want to check this box for make the most money possible that we can find?
Of course,
and then they go, yes, that seems like a good way for me to invest my money. And so ironically, the people that are going to see the least effect of these investments are the people that are the most heavily invested in these investments. And it's very funny. I was thinking about it as you were talking about the story, is oil and gas are becoming more valuable as they become harder to find and more expensive because the cost associated with moving them due to futures and there might be more here or here, maybe something like that happens, is higher. So it's very interesting just as a concept to think about that oil and gas are more valuable when they get scarcer and their price gets driven up, which of course for regular people, I mean, this is quite literally investing in oil that is extracting wealth from regular people filling up their car or their truck or whatever it might be. So I think this is an important cycle that we need to point out of another system in which money is siphoned in such a way. Because it's like, a lot of people that grew up in the 60s and the 70s, they had 401ks. They had jobs with retirement packages. Those have come to roost. They are now full swing. It's what they're living on. That's what they're investing in. And so, again, I think that most of this comes down to a question of when these people are getting their retirements figured out, being asked, do you want to make the most money? Or do you want to check this box saying, no, I want to be ethical and maybe not invest in issuable stocks? But this to me is a system that we have put together that is working out in a very predictable way. Every part of the step in the way it's set up makes sense, except it is helping contribute to the destruction of the planet.
So, look, hold on, Kira. If there's anything else you want to add, I do want to have a final note, because it's hard to follow what Daniel said and you with your opening and your information.
Go for it.
Then I would. So, as I said before, it's hard to follow what Daniel said because he's speaking about the facts. It's hard to follow what Kira said. So, I'm going to have my own twist on the story. And FaZe, I apologize. I need to send you this link right away because you need to share this with the people. It's going to be sent in our Slack chat, but you need to pull this tweet up now immediately. 2 hours ago, Steven Donziger just said goodbye to his...
Thanks. I got your message.
Steven Donziger just said goodbye to his son. He is reporting for prison. Now, again, I understand for people who are investing into oil, I get people like to make money and all this, but there's a price to this. Big oil has been causing a lot of disasters. Big oil has been causing a lot of environmental disasters. We talked about pipelines breaking. There's a Line 3 pipeline, the Line 5 pipeline underneath Lake Michigan. There's a Colonial pipeline that has been reported on by Robbie Yeager, which has potential of being the worst pipeline leak in history. There's the North Dakota, there's the DAPL pipeline that has leaks. There's these big tankers that are leaking on the coastlines, on the East Coast and West Coast, oil rigs that are breaking apart. It's just, it's one disaster after another, and there's a human and environmental price. But if we can pull this tweet up, let's talk about someone who's actually stood up to big oil. And so to these investors, what do you want to say to this guy right here, Steven Donziger and his family, as he did the right thing? He's saying goodbye to the most important young man in his life. If we could scroll down, that's an image of him hugging his son. He has to go to jail now. So investors into big oil, I'm not asking to have a heart. I'm just letting you know there's going to be a price to this. And people like Steven Donziger, who fight for the native people in Ecuador, who fight for the protection of the rainforest in Ecuador, well, I guess they're all on the chopping block now. And see, the thing is, we need people like Steven Donziger, lawyers like him who will fight for people, and to stand up against corporations. Because what Chevron has done is terrible. And everyone that's investing into these big oil companies, you're helping contribute to the disaster of the human species and climate change. Steven Donziger did nothing wrong, and now he's going to jail. If the money's worth it, okay, then I get it. Can you pull that image up one more time? I'm sorry, FaZe, because this is the cost of it right here. Kira, do you have any other final notes?
If you are a shareholder in oil, maybe consider putting your money someplace else, someplace that has a future for your money. It may not be the largest, most immediate one. I do know that some of the companies that are managing a lot of money are starting to make pledges to invest in renewable energy. But they've only recently made these announcements, like in September. And so it's one of those, like, we have to wait and see. I'm not here to do PR for those companies necessarily. But, there have been statements made. Gauntlets have been dropped. No, there have been statements made, and so now all there is to do is really look for it, and also make requests of your money managers. Yeah.
I think that the thing here's what's going to happen, unless something transpires and governments get reformatted or what have you. We're going to be using oil until the supply gets truly constrained. Mm-hmm. That's the thing, because people are going to keep paying. Like, the amount that we're paying in the U.S. per gallon for fuel is what Europe has paid, half of what Europe has paid for the last 5 or 10 years. Just because we have our empire, our gas is really cheap. Of the places that don't subsidize fuel costs, we are one of the cheapest places. So it's when gas starts getting to, I don't know, $7 or $8 a gallon, are people going to really start freaking out? Like, already it's difficult. But I also remember, I think it was Lainey that was covering that natural gas is about to be 3 times as expensive as it usually is this winter. So on one hand, you're going to have a price demand issue that is going to force them to do something. That's probably go to war with somewhere to open up more supply or force OPEC to do something or other. The thing that's really going to turn the tables is when we are just out of oil. We're not out of oil. Our supply literally just cannot meet demand on the planet. There's going to be a constraint, and then the government's going to all start going, hey, you can't drive your car on these days. Hey, this is like what we've seen in the 70s. And then they're going to be contracting the same exact companies that have put us in this mess, and they're going to say, we're going to throw hundreds of billions of dollars at you. Please build wind turbines. Please build solar panels. And I'm going to say, the way things are going, the same people that are screwing us and have destroyed the environment are the same people that are going to continue to make money in the future in a renewable energy state.
Yeah. And again, we here at Heartlands Media want to say this, though. Hashtag free Steven Donziger. Steven Donziger didn't commit any crimes. And investors, was it worth it? I hope so. It's only for a short term. That's all. We only have one planet.